In many animal groups, the sick animal isolates itself for a period of rest in which it is also free to seek out those natural conditions most conducive to its health. It travels to find certain herbs, or it lies in the mud or clay by certain rivers. Often it is helped by others of its kind, but it is free. When and if it is killed by its brothers, this is not an act of cruelty, but an innate understanding that the creature can no longer operate physically without agony. A quite natural euthanasia is involved, in which the patient also acquiesces. In your society, such a natural death is most difficult, and because of the power structures, can hardly be promoted. No one who decides upon death is saved from it by the medical profession, however. On deeper levels, the quite normal desire for survival requires that the individual leave his or her body in your terms at one time or another. When that period arrives, the person knows it, and the great vitality of the spirit no longer wants to be encased by a suffering physical body. Yet, here the medical profession often takes care to see that every technological advance is brought to bear to force the self to remain within its flesh, when naturally soul and flesh would part. There are normal interlocking mechanisms that prepare the self for death, even chemical interactions that make this easier physically, bursts of acceleration in your terms to propel the individual easily out of the body. Drugs can only hamper this. Certain kinds of medications can indeed help, but those given in your hospital simply drug the consciousness out of its own understanding and inhibit the body's mechanisms that make for an easy transition. In your prisons, you do the same thing, of course, isolating groups of people with like beliefs, denying them all natural stimuli so that a greater contagion of similar beliefs ensues. You separate such people from the normal contact of their loved ones and all usual conditions for growth or development. Let's talk about it. We see that in many animal groups, when an individual becomes sick, well, it instinctively isolates itself from the rest of the group. It does this to rest, to recover, and during this period, the sick animal, it has the freedom, keyword freedom, to seek out natural conditions that are most beneficial to its health. It can travel to find certain herbs, or it can even choose to lie in the mud or the clay by certain rivers. Now, sometimes other members of the same species might assist the sick animal, but ultimately it has the freedom to make its own choices. Now, if at some point the sick animal is killed by its own kind, this is not an act of cruelty, but it's a natural, innate understanding that the creature is suffering and can no longer function physically without pain, without agony. This is a natural form of euthanasia. And the sick animal also accepts its fate because it's natural. But in human society, such a natural death is often difficult to come by because of power structures that have been put in place, because of promotion and propaganda and so on and so forth. It's very important to note that the decision of death cannot be avoided by relying solely on the medical profession. And on deeper levels, there's a natural desire for survival that necessitates the individual to eventually leave their physical body. When the time comes, believe it or not, the person knows it. And the powerful vitality of the spirit which is what we are, not who we are, but what we are, no longer wants to be confined within a suffering physical body. However, in many cases, the medical profession, it strives to use every technological advancement available to force the self to remain within the physical body, even when the soul, which is what we are, and the body would naturally separate. You see, everything is already set up for us. I mean, there are normal, interlocking mechanisms in place that prepare the self for death. And that even includes chemical interactions that make the transition easier physically. These mechanisms involve bursts of acceleration, as we mentioned earlier, metaphorically speaking, to propel the individual effortlessly out of the body. In the medical profession, the use of drugs can only hinder this natural process. Now, while certain types of medications can be helpful in facilitating a smoother transition, making things, less painful, the medications commonly given in hospitals often dull the consciousness, and they inhibit the body's natural mechanisms that would naturally allow for an easy passage into death. So we talked about prisons, and similarly in prisons, similar approaches taken by isolating groups of individuals with similar beliefs. By denying them natural stimuli and separating them from their loved ones, the aim is to promote a greater contagion of similar beliefs. What I mean is, these individuals are cut off from normal contact and the usual conditions necessary for a person to grow, for a person to develop naturally. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a share, giving it a like, and subscribing for more. Also, what did you think of my breakdown of the passage? Do you have anything else you'd like to insert? Let's start a discussion below. Until the next time, thank you.